Hey everyone, thanks for joining us for Reconstructing Truth on episode 1, season 1. Caleb and I are excited to finally kick off this project that we've been telling you about so much. And so as we get started right now, you can find this on multiple locations, a couple different channels. You'll see that we are airing, potentially you see that we're airing on Cedar Point Recovery. So if you've been a longtime listener, subscriber, all of that, you're finding us on our typical channels. Now, we want to remind you that that's not going to be the case for much longer. Probably about the first of the year or so, gives people plenty of time. We're going to stop airing this on anything that's Cedar Point Recovery, and we're going to kick it completely over to Reconstructing Truth. So you can find us on social medias revolving around that. So you can find us on YouTube. If you're an Apple person, you can find us on podcast, Google, Yeezy, Deezer, all of the things like that. And so we're just excited again to bring you this new project, new channels, so that you have the opportunity just to join us. So we're pumped. But maybe asking like why the change, why the work? Well, we're just that kind of people. We like to work hard. Yeah. But no, there's a little more behind it. Caleb's kind of more technical on that, and algorithms and the mysteries of the interwebs or something like that, right?
Yeah. So part of it was from a technical standpoint, we when we're airing everything on our old Cedar Point Recovery channel is that one time Mondays we'll live stream our services here at our church, our recovery ministry, and then Fridays we are releasing a podcast that we're talking about different things, and so it's harder for algorithmically for that to understand kind of our content because it's two very different formats. And so part of it is, we're going to do better for both ministries, the podcast plus our recovery ministry, by separating these things out. That's one of the reasons. One of the other reasons, and we had talked about that a little bit on our welcome video, and then in previous, I think as we were announcing that we're going to make this change, is that this is going to allow us to kind of broaden the topics that we'd like to talk about, because while we do enjoy talking about recovery, it's very niche. There's only so much we can do there, and the thing is we're at a place in time right now where while recovery is important, and we will continue to bring that into the things that we talk about. Culturally, where we're at as a society is, we both feel a need to be able to address, like I said, a wider breadth of issues that are outside of recovery, at least from a Christian standpoint, as far as what our faith means and what the Bible actually says, and to really start pushing us as believers to take firmer stances on a lot of things that we wanted to address. Yeah,
so it really is. I love recovery, obviously. I'm in it. So. Yeah. And in all of that, but Caleb and I really have a heart for pushing back. We don't like to take things sitting down and shutting up. Anybody who knows us probably very.
We're both very abrasive people.
And so
or can be.
At one point in time, I would have argued that addiction is one of the greatest threats right now in the church and in culture. But not anymore. Now there's just this great shift that's not even attacks from the outside of the church. It's starting to come from within, and we talked about that on our welcome video and stuff. But it's this movement of deconstructionism, and we want to push back against that. So as we look at the logo here behind us, this is Reconstructing Truth, and what it is, it's meant to be a direct affront to deconstructionism, which we've touched on a little bit in the past. But Caleb, I'm gonna let you kind of lay that out.
Yeah. So what Aaron was talking about is that one of our greatest enemies right now in the church, not only is it's outside the culture, but it's also inside the church. And what the Bible tells us, that a house divided against itself cannot prosper. Yeah. And and that's what's happening to the church right now. And to get historical ideas is America was founded, and we had an episode on our old podcast talking about this. We're talking about how we live in a post-Christian society right now, and we were founded on Judeo-Christian values and beliefs. And so, and for the first time ever in the history of America, you could say that we are post-Christian. We don't, our church membership and attendance right now is Less than half of the people in America attend church on a regular basis. Was it the undecideds as far as how they identify in their faith? People who basically say they don't know what they are, right, faith wise. That's a majority of people in America right now, and we're seeing the consequences of that. We started down this road in the '60s, and we continue to. That snowball just keeps picking up steam downhill. Yeah. And here within the last 10, 20 years, it's increased and accelerated even more as far as culturally, the degradation of our culture. And like I said, this deconstructionism, which is basically where society has said, has tried to pin in and hem in Christianity and our beliefs and our faith, say, you've got to keep that restricted to your to your churches. When you're at church, you can say and do whatever it is you want, even though I would say that's coming to an end too, the rate we're going. But, basically like whatever you do in there is fine. But once you get outside your church walls, you need to keep it to yourself. And so instead of us taking a firm stance and having some sort of backbone, a lot of, especially in the younger generations, they've come out and they don't want to get their feelings hurt. And they don't want to hurt other people's feelings. That's more important to them. And so when confronted, society says one thing and the Bible says another thing, they start to hem and haw and start to, well, does the Bible really say, which is the first thing Satan says to Adam and Eve, right? And that's really where this is coming from. You got to, we're talking about is that, Satan is saying the same thing to us now. It's like, well, does it really say that? Does it really say, should we really, do we really need to take a strong stance on these social issues because that makes everybody uncomfortable? Yeah. Well, I can just be a Christian by just believing in Jesus and love is love, and I can ignore everything else, know? And so that's the long answer for what is this deconstructionism we're pushing against? Right.
And, it's not new, it's been an attempt, but I think one of the things that makes it more prevalent now is the internet, right? These heretical ideas that, again, they're not new. It's things that have been thrown out before. Will gain steam, and people who are biblically illiterate will go, I've never thought about that, not knowing that it's been thought about, it's been talked about, it's been debunked.
Yeah.
And so it's garnered just this new type of steam because ignorance is on full display anymore with Facebook and Instagram and things like that, and all the other just avenues for people to get up and spew nonsense, and so that's what we want to push back with. And so when we look again, and I said it's nothing new. We talked about that. We're going to try something new here. We're going to try to pull up a verse for you. If you join us on audio, again, check out the video, see if you like it more. But we're going to look at a passage here in 1 Timothy 4:1. It says, "Now the Holy Spirit tells us clearly that in the last times some will turn away from true faith. They will follow deceptive spirits and teachings that come from demons." This is where we get doctrines of demons. "These people are hypocrites and liars, and their consciences are dead." And so, again, what we see this is an inside the faith. They're turning away from the true faith, meaning they were a part of the faith at one point. And we see this with musicians, right? These people that were champions of the faith and pushing gospel music, and then all of a sudden they woke up one day and they're just like, I just don't know if I believe, because, why would a good God do such terrible things? And, it's like...
Nobody's ever asked this hard questions before.
Question anymore. And so they're like, it's not enough. It's not enough for them to go wrestle with their faith. They've got a platform, right? That they've earned, and they've got to utilize it. They've got millions of people listening to them, so they take this asinine idea that's been talked about before, and they go present it to all their followers. Have you guys ever thought? It's like, man, you guys just a bunch of morons out here doing this.
And so blind leading the blind.
Yeah, it really is. And so some will turn away from their faith and follow deceptive spirits and teachings. And so things that sound good, but they're not good. Yeah. Things that sound intellectual, but they're not. They're idiotic. And they question these things, and then they don't really move into researching them. Because if you did, what you'd find is brilliant church leaders throughout history have debated these things very well.
Yeah.
There's great readings on early church leaders that you can go look at, and beyond that, really knowing your word and getting into it and beginning to take a deep dive, and you can see just how ridiculous these things are once you get past kind of the face of it.
Yeah, no, I mean, what you said earlier, that ignorance is on full display today is the understatement of the century. And, and that's the thing that kills me, is that these guys, some of these things we've kind of been sarcastic and made jokes about come from a true things that have happened. Like Aaron was talking about, here lately, we've had, like he's talked about, we've had Christian art, quote unquote Christian thought leaders that have walked away, very publicly walked away, announced it to their hundreds of, 100,000 Instagram followers. Oh, I've decided to, I can't be Christian anymore because, I just couldn't find any. I had all these questions that had no answers, and it is. I go to look at, I read this article on online. It's how so and so is walking away, and he put out his manifesto on Instagram, and I go read it, and I'm like, are you serious? Are you serious? Right? I mean, it's like, yeah, it's like I just how could a good God let bad things happen? It's like you. And this is the hubris of this generation, is that they think that they're the first to come up with these questions. Christianity's been around for 2,000 years, people. You're not the first to come up with these questions. And people that are much more intelligent, rational, and logical than you have gone into that and written just tomes of, books. Go get on Amazon and look at, search like the writings of Augustus or Thomas Aquinas, or
Ignatius.
And it's like 20 volumes of 500 pages a piece of all the thoughts and things that you could think of about the Christian faith. And I mean, everything. It's like, and these guys didn't have social media to waste their time. All they did was sit around all day and think about the philosophy and of the faith, and then write about it. Yep. Just ad nauseum. So I mean, like, it's just insane to me that people, like I said, the arrogance to think that that we're the only deep thinkers when it comes to this stuff.
Yeah, there's Justin Martyr's dialogue with Trypho. Thank you. I was trying to find it. That's a great conversation. They just go back and forth on things like this. I mean, again, you can find it, and this is something that's AD. Like 170 AD. So you're talking within 150 years of the resurrection of Jesus, having these conversations. So, I mean, somebody who would have known people who had firsthand accounts answering the questions that people are now bringing up 2,000 years later, like it's some brand new idea. And it's like, no. Conversations have been had by people who knew a lot more than you did.
Yeah. And
the answers have been brought about satisfactory on top of that. To a great degree. I want to turn over to 2 Timothy 3:1-5, and this kind of is where we're going to lay out. I did the wrong thing there. There we go. Lay out kind of the second part of what we see here, and it's this, Timothy, that in the last days there will be very difficult times, for people will love only themselves and their money. They will be boastful and proud, scoffing at God, disobedient to their parents, and ungrateful. They will consider nothing sacred. They will be unloving, unforgiving. They will slander others, have no self-control. They will be cruel, hate what is good. They will betray their friends, be reckless, be puffed up with pride, and love pleasure rather than God. They will act religious, but they will reject the power that could make them godly. Stay away from people like that. I mean, could anything more profound be written about today's culture? And again, we think we have new ideas here and new things going on, and I mean, and things like that. It's just, how could you in what right mind could you call the Bible outdated or anything? It's like that speaks to our culture. You know why it speaks to our culture? Because we're the same people on repeat. We wear different clothes and drive cars now instead of riding a camel. But yeah, we have the same problems, the same issues, come up with the same moronic ideas, and it's on repeat. And the more that we go back and look at things like this and actually know our word and stuff, we can see, all right, this is not profound. There's answers to this, and I can see that this is an error.
Yeah. We're like the people in the Matrix, like if you ever saw it, maybe it's like,
oh, yeah.
They're using, this simulation, and then, eventually humans start to wake up. And so basically the robots just have to reset it, and then they just redo it again. And we're the same way. I mean, Ecclesiastes says that there's nothing new under the sun. And that was, thousands of years ago. And he's, Solomon's already figured that out. It's like, it's just the same old crap every day. and that's how we operate.
Yeah. And so as we move on, I love Paul's teaching to Timothy, on this, obviously, as we look at it. And I want to look at the next one. It's going to be 2 Timothy 4, 3 through 4. And it says, for a time is coming when people will no longer listen to sound and wholesome teaching. And again, we kind of see that taking place, not kind of. We very much so see that taking place in our church. Our church is. They will follow their own desires and look for teachers who will tell them whatever their itching ears want to hear. They will reject the truth and chase after myths. And so, I mean, right now we do, when you go back and you look at that, whatever their itching ears want to hear is, that's we don't pick churches anymore or leaders based off of what's true, right? Because truth is fluid now. We make our own truth, and so we want to find the person who's saying the truth that we believe,
right.
And ignore the fact that there's not a truth that you believe. There's the truth, and then you're wrong. And so we no longer look at doctrine or theology or any of that. Barna put out a poll, I think it was Barna, not too long ago, that one of the greatest influences in people picking a denomination or a church is political affiliation and belief. And it's just like, you going to pick something that has eternal consequences based off of who they vote for, and what party they stand with. Now, don't get me wrong. There's,
and that's completely backwards.
Yeah, there's things that I see in certain political parties that I'm like, that's immoral. We should stand against that. And that may be their prevailing kind of banner that they go behind. And so, I get that, but you can't pick a church based off of political affiliation. That's, it's one of those things that just leads you to destruction. Ultimately, that's what it leads you to.
Yeah, no, I mean, and the complete, the perfect picture of what we're talking about, and like what you're talking about as far as churches, and we go to churches that make us feel warm and fuzzy inside, is the fact that the largest church in America right now is down in Houston. It's led by Joel Osteen, who tells you that you can live your best life now, and that you just need to. I mean, it's a every Sunday's a self-help seminar, and it's there's no doctrine, there's no firm teaching about. The truths of Christianity, taking a stand, on the tough things. There's none of that. It's just ear candy and however long he talks. It's just, being told what you want to hear, that you deserve to be wealthy, healthy, and wise, and that, if you just have enough faith, you'll get everything, that God, God's a big cosmic candy machine, and that he'll just give you everything if you just have enough faith, and that, we're all destined, God wants us all to be, like I said, wealthy and happy all the time. And that's really not what the Bible teaches us. And, but that is the perfect picture of American Christianity. And that's why it's the biggest church in America. So,
and so, we do have to be careful about what doctrine is being taught, and in knowing, what doctrine is. If it's one of those words, like, I don't even know what you're talking about there. You should look it up. Knowing what theology is, and what, where we fall on that bandwidth of there's a reason there's different denominations. There's a reason there's different beliefs, and not every church that has a cross on it is the same. Not every church within a congregation or a denomination is necessarily the same. It's important to look at what that shepherd is teaching you, what they believe, how it lines up biblically. And in order to do that, you have to actually open your Bible. You have to read. You have to know. Otherwise, you may find yourself turning away. It's like, man, I really like that. I like what he's saying. Well, why do you like it? Do you like it because it's truth, or do you like it because it lines up with you, the God in the mirror, right? That can be a really bad thing. It'd be incredibly dangerous. And so we need to know. We need to know what we believe, and we need to know how it is reflected in Scripture, right? That's the ultimate truth. And apply that to our lives, and then kind of move forward from there. And so again, that's how we push back against deconstructionism. Because what happens right now is you have church leaders who they go around and they present themselves as pastors, teachers, leaders, and that's the scary thing. Some people openly walk away from the faith and they say, "Oh, I'm no longer going to be it," and they do that. There's a whole nother group of people in this type of ideology, and what they do is they don't walk away. They decide that they're unbelievers, and they're not as open with it. They're not upfront about where they're at. They continue to be in that position for whatever reason. Maybe they like the authority, the power, just the popularity. It could be any number of things. But they remain in that position, and then they seek to intentionally lead people astray. I say astray in their mind. They're not. That's the real dangerous thing too. The only thing worse than a liar is somebody who's lying and thinks that they're telling you the truth. And that's what you have here. And so they begin to present different things. There's a book, I don't know if you ever read it. It was Another Gospel. It's by Alyssa Childers, I think is her name. And she talks about this. She was somebody who grew up in the faith, was a part of some band called Zoe Girl or Zoe Girls, I don't know. But as an adult, she found herself in a church, and she was not seeking to walk away from the faith, and ultimately didn't. But here this teacher and this leader was, and he started this Bible study class, and so she wanted to be a good Christian because that's her heart. She wanted to follow God. And so things start off, and as they get into it, things begin to get weird, and he begins to challenge their faith in a really unhealthy way and bring up things. Well, did the virgin birth really take place? Well, why does it matter? Can't we have faith in Jesus without the virgin birth? And so what happens is, if they can find a certain string of doctrine, it's kind of like the old cartoon where they had the one string on the sweater, and as you pull it, eventually the whole sweater disappears. Well, that's what deconstruction attempts to do. They can poke and prod enough, and they can find an area to get you to begin to disagree with Christianity and begin to pull on it. They can unravel it all in your mind, and that's kind of the goal there, and that's the danger of those people who, again, they maintain that position, they maintain the facade, but deep down inside, they've bought into doctrines of demons. They're telling you things that you want to hear. It sounds good. You buy into it. And over time, you've walked away from the faith completely, and you find yourself as one of these jackwagons who is in publicly telling everybody on Instagram or Facebook how you've been deceived your whole life, and this, that, and the other.
Love is love.
Yeah,
that's all you need. All you need is love. It's a good Beatles song, but it's not the basis for religion. So, and that's if bringing up Alyssa Childers, she's one of the few out there that's putting out solid info. So if you haven't listened to her stuff, she has a podcast too, and I definitely would encourage you to do it. And Alyssa, if you ever hear our podcast and you want to cross promote, by all means, just let us know.
She does put out a lot of good stuff, and again, she's got the book Another Gospel. There's another one too. I didn't read that one. I did audio, so I hate to tell you I read that one. Man, I wish I could think of the name of it. It's really good too, and
I'm going to talk for a second, and you can Google it.
Yeah.
Her and the guy from the lead singer from Skillet, those two are in the same vein. I can't think of what's his name. I can't think of it, but he does his own stuff too, and he's his podcast is very similar to what we're trying to do here and push back against this thing. But talking about the pulling the thread, this is what I call a buffet religion, and that's what I said it a long time ago is early 2000s that a lot of what's going on in the church today is this buffet religion where we're going to take the parts that we like, put it on our plate, leave the stuff that we don't like, and we just get to pick and choose what it is we want to talk about or what it is we want to believe. And unfortunately we're not God, so we don't get to decide that. And but now instead of that kind of being just in the background of things, now the deconstruction movement is saying the quiet parts out loud. They're just saying it. They're just like, listen, we don't have to, culture says, that, all relationships are the same. And so, and I don't want to be called a bigot and a homophobe and all these bad words. And so I'm just not gonna, hey, it's okay. Look, God is love. And so, I don't have to have a strong stance on this. If you want to, love whoever you want to love, then fine. You can love whoever you want to love. And who am I to tell you? It's like, well, you're not. God is though. God. We don't take that same stance with like adultery.
Yeah.
Hey, love is love. And who are you to tell me, that it's wrong to cheat on my wife with 3 other women?
Well, unfortunately, some people do take that stance on adultery.
Well, yeah. I mean, give it another 5 years, right? And somebody would be like, well, can love be contained to one person? But that's where we're at, though. I mean, and like I said, the fact that we can have this, we can joke about this as being something that could potentially happen soon is ridiculous.
Oh yeah, it's incredibly ridiculous.
But that's a statement on where the church and our culture is today.
Yeah, I'm gonna pull these books. This is so great that we can do stuff like this. So you can see right there, we got another gospel. That's great. Live Your Truth goes the other one, and Deconstruction in Christianity. I have not read that one, but I'm going to, because, like I said, the other two were great. Another gospel is a deep read. It's heavy, but it's good. It's not so complex. My 16-year-old read it, and he got a lot out of it and could understand it and digest it and have a conversation with it. So if you can't, I'm concerned about you. And then Live Your Truth was one I listened to on audio, but it was great. I encourage you to check that out, and then hopefully we can check out Deconstruction of Christianity together. So
yeah.
Get back to our other things here.
Yeah. So all of this to say is that, the point we're going to get at with this and with our podcast is that as Christians, we can no longer sit on the sidelines and just be fed. We cannot be consumers. The church, the Big C church, changed to kind of this consumer model back in the late 90s when we changed to the seeker sensitive church movement, which had a lot of good things that came out of it, but the bad things that came out of it is that when I say seeker sensitive, if you're not familiar with that term, what it is, so back in the 1900s, churches weren't necessarily welcoming to people who weren't Christian. I grew up conservative Southern Baptist, so they
hate people and evangelism.
Yeah, if you yeah, we say that, but
I'm serious.
We don't want you to come to church, but then we would perform the most confrontational type of evangelism. I remember having to do that. I've done that before, where you go door to door, knock, "Hi, sir. If you were to die today, do you know where would you go to hell?" And we're just "Hi, my name's Bill. Can we start there?"
So at 8 years old, like I said, the only exposure I had to church was a Southern Baptist type thing. My mom was raised in that, and so when we go, it was that. And in 8 years old, I mean, it was kind of like a presentation of, do you want to go to heaven with your parents, or do you want to go to hell and burn forever?
Yeah,
it's like.
I guess the first
heaven?
one.
Yeah, heaven sounds much better. I don't know
we'll
what
give you
you're
a
talking
Snickers
about.
if you do it too. It's like.
But I'm not 100% sure what's going on right now. But please don't take me away from my parents.
Yeah. Well, and surprise, surprise, when that generation, goes off to college and is confronted with ideas, outside of what they heard at church, and they're like. Yeah, I don't know if I believe that anymore.
Yeah.
Big surprise, and we still struggle with that today. But so yeah, that's how church was. It's like if you came in and you had more than if you had 2 visible tattoos, you're like, yeah, I don't know if this is a place for you. That was kind of the thing. And so, this really came out of Rick Warren's Saddleback Church out in California. Was like, maybe this isn't the best way to get people into church. Be critical of them when they come in and expect them to be perfect before they come to church. And so what we did was we started to change our church service to be, the music sounded like music you would hear on the radio. And we stepped the level of production up. And
it was really good.
Yeah, which is good. These are not bad things. And then we made messages more applicable to life, maybe a little bit more pragmatic, like 5 ways to be a better parent, according to the Bible, or something like, that kind of thing, which is not in and of itself bad. But what happened though is when you've taken your church and you've created it to cater to the people who attend, to their every wish and need, to make it appealing to everything that your congregation wants, then now all of a sudden we're not in a position to push back against or to confront the way we live. So you got a whole congregation full of people who like the message, like the idea of being forgiven and of grace, which is good. We just left off the part of, okay, now you have to live in accordance with what God calls you to do. You can't just continue to be this way. You've got to, we as Christians, this is something that makes us unique. As Christians, we believe you don't earn salvation by the way you behave. You accept salvation because it's a gift given to you from God. But then your outward life has to start to reflect that. Yeah. Just like the example I always use of being married. Your attitude and the way you behave should change drastically after the day you get married, right? Like, you can't go out cavorting around with a bunch of, loose women. You shouldn't have been doing that beforehand. But anyway, but especially after you're married, like that attitude has to change. That behavior has to change. And so that's what has to happen as Christians. And what's happened is, like, we've got everybody into the church, and then we just like, well, you can just keep doing what you're doing. Yeah. Because we don't want to confront any of that because it's uncomfortable.
Yeah. And leave.
Yeah, we might leave, and numbers matter and the offering matters. And we want to have the biggest, baddest church. And
I would say those things do matter. But it can't be. This means you can't just make a nice place for people to go to hell from.
Right. Yeah.
Numbers matter because people matter. I want, as a pastor, I want butts in the seats.
Yeah.
Well, why? So they can hear a message of truth. Right. And as a pastor, finances matter for multiple reasons. One, it's a blessing to the person given. God commands us to do that. So. But again, when you have such an emphasis, and people fall into this in varying ways, as far as leaders, where they have became over seeker sensitive, and maybe it's because they put finances above all else, and they're afraid people are going to leave, and then you don't have that, or maybe they're just afraid that seats will be too empty, so they don't want to do that, or maybe they convince themselves over time, that people, because they're there, God loves them, and like Jesus says, the path to heaven's wide. That's sarcasm, by the way.
Yes.
If you're listening, but for whatever reason they convince themselves, all right, I'm not going to have to actually have hard conversations, that there's a painless way to do ministry. Yeah. And that's just not accurate. Yeah. That eventually you, not necessarily you, but their sin has to be confronted. And by something. God's going to carry that out and confront them. But, we're called to carry out God's will to a degree, right? We don't pass final judgment, like we don't declare somebody guilty eternally or something, but we, somebody who's calling themselves a Christian, it is biblical to look at what they're doing and correct them for the sake of their soul. That's a biblical practice. We see that. Paul lays that out. 2 Corinthians 5, I believe it is. And so, we can't just back up from that completely for the sake, again, of attendance or anything else. There's nothing else that, again, at some point we have to have conversations with people. Yeah.
And so now, and that's where it was going, is that, so if you've grown up in this generation in the church, you've grown up in consumer church. Yeah. That's what church is. I show up, I want you to, feed me, Seymour, it's the, I want the music to be good. I want the donuts to be good. I want the coffee to be, if it's not, I'm going to leave and go find some place that is. And that is not what we should be doing as Christians. Yeah. As Christians, we cannot afford, as a church, Big C Church, like the church as a whole, we can no longer be consumers. We have to engage. We have to be participants. We have to mentally check back in. Okay, we can't, because this is like we were making fun of before. We can no longer, if we want to live in a society where, again, I don't have to, this is never going to not be the case anymore. I know we've opened the Pandora's box too far, I think, but where, I used to be able to let my kids watch TV and not have to worry about what is on, but now I have to preview, what are you watching? I'm going to have to either watch it myself first, or I'm going to have to, look up some family guides online to find out. And we didn't used to have to do that.
No.
And now we're that way. And the reason we are that way is because we have sat on the sidelines too long and allowed society and culture to tell us what to believe as believers, and to tell us what's in our Bible, because we don't know, because we've just consumed. We've just, whatever our pastor tells us on a Sunday, we're like, I guess that's the extent of our knowledge. And that's if we're paying attention, and that's if we're not streaming the game on our phone or just scrolling through Facebook or whatever. And so that's what this is going to be about as far as our podcast, is that, to start to engage and start to challenge, hopefully, everybody that's listening to, like I said, get off the sidelines. You're going to have to open your Bible. You're going to have to start understanding what it is you believe. If you say you're a Christian, to say, this is what I hold these beliefs. And, when we run into somebody who thinks different than us, we don't have to beat them over the head, and we don't have to, call them a heretic and, point at them and say you're going to hell and that kind of thing. Because, because we used to do that kind of thing. That wasn't very effective. But we've swung the pendulum the other way, and we just have to say, no, I'm not, this is what I believe, and this is what I'm going to stand firm to this. I'm not going to hate you because you think it's different than me, but I'm not going to change my belief because you call me a name, or because, whatever. I may have to walk away from a job, or, some friends that, this is going to be a deal breaker for them. We may have to make tough choices. Our tough choices are nowhere near as tough as they've been throughout history for Christians. So far we're not being killed for what we believe, right? Nobody's getting thrown into the
we're turned into a lamp.
Yeah, we're not being turned into a lamp. Yeah, we're not getting massacred in our homes like it's happening over in Israel right now. We're not getting eaten by lions at the Colosseum or crucified, and any of those things. We're going to have to get uncomfortable. Like, in the fact that that's the thing that's limiting us is pretty sad as a country. I mean, we were founded by a group of people who got on a boat and sailed across an ocean. What is this, like 30, 60 days? Because, other Christians were saying, you can't worship like we want you to. And they're like, fine, forget you. We're going over this landmass that's somewhere across this huge body of ocean and a body of water. And, we're going to start civilization over for ourselves. We're like, I don't want to lose you as a Facebook friend. This is too much for me. So that's what we're going to be about, I think. And, and so that's our kind of call to you as our listeners, that, we got to start to commit to get off the sidelines, to get off the bench and get in the game, because we can't afford to continue giving up ground.
Yeah. One last passage we're gonna kind of look at real quick before we segue into just a cultural topic specifically. It's in Romans 1:21, and so we see here it says, "Yes, they knew God, but they wouldn't worship Him as God or even give Him thanks. They began to think up foolish ideas of what God was like. As a result, their minds became dark and confused, claiming to be wise. They instead became utter fools, and instead of worshiping the glorious, ever-living God, they worshipped idols made to look like mere people, and birds and animals and reptiles. So God abandoned them to do whatever their shameful hearts desires. As a result, they did vile, degrading things with each other's bodies. They traded the truth about God for a lie. They worshipped and served the things God created instead of the Creator Himself, who is worthy of eternal praise." And so, go ahead and let you.
I was just going to say, I mean, are we reading? Are we reading about the Romans, or are we reading about America in 2023?
Oh, right.
I mean, goodness sakes.
So that kind of segues into what we want to talk about culturally, right? As we see this type of idolatry with people, individuals, sexuality, and things like that nature, and we kind of steer clear of it, right? And we say, this is a funny statement I hear all the time. Well, there's separation of church and state, and so I don't want to get involved. And it's like that's so stupid. One, that's written so that the state wouldn't be in the church.
Yeah, it's to protect the church from the state, not the other way around.
Yeah, not the other way around. As Christians, we actually have an obligation to engage in politics and things. To sway stuff towards a godly manner. But not only that, these aren't political issues, right?
Right. Yeah. And so as we're segueing, so one thing we want to do with this podcast that we didn't do with our previous one is that we want to have a cultural segment where we talk specifically about a cultural situation or I mean, we may just be talking about, hey, this movie's really good. You should see it because it's got some really good values or things like that but yeah, we're going to talk specifically about culture because culture is everything that we're experiencing outside of the church, right? And so, I mean, even there's culture inside the church. Actually, there's probably a little bit too much of the culture into our church, But to call us to engage because, like Aaron said, well, I'm just going to, we shouldn't be political or we shouldn't be involved. Heck no. That's exactly why. Here's the deal. The side that wants to just be left alone always loses, because the secular side, right? And there's what I would call the secular side, people who just, we're just basically humanists, right? I'm going to do what feels good. Their ultimate goal or driving force is just pleasure, right? Whatever makes, physically, mentally, emotionally, whatever makes me feel good. There's that segment of society. But then there's the out and out, side. I mean, there is a Satan, right? I mean, there's an evil force that is pushing against what God has created to tear us down, to separate us from God. And there is, a malevolent force that exists that is in direct rebellion against God, and that exists within our society and our culture too. And we can't act like that's not out there, And again, back to the church watering down things. That is one thing. How many times have you heard from a pulpit a pastor talking about Satan or hell? I mean, like we're just talking about hell today on a Sunday. Like we haven't never done that, what I mean? And so, so sometimes that gets into the background, right? We forget that there is an evil out there. And so what I wanted to kind of set the ground for this segment is this interview that was done by Bob Iger, which he was the head of Disney, and then he stepped down. It was replaced by a guy who basically was the fall guy for everything Bob Iger put into place at Disney. This guy had to reap the rewards of that, which is a collapsing stock price because Disney has decided to wade into cultural issues. And since then, Bob Iger has been called back and is now the head of Disney. And if you have kids, you're aware of what's been going on with some of the things with Disney. But I mean, that is the biggest cultural mover, especially in families, is the Disney Corporation. I mean,
oh yeah, I know we did away with Disney as a family. There's no subscription, and I like some Disney programming, right?
Yeah,
especially stuff I grew up with. And it's regrettable I can't let my kids engage with that much. But here's the thing too, as believers, we have to begin to draw lines in the sand. Otherwise, we'll continue to be overtaken. And we have to stop making sacrifices, sacrificing what we believe is morally right and good for our children in the name of entertainment or anything else, or convenience. And so, we stopped paying for that, and there's just a lot of things I won't engage with. I wish I could say that, there's just absolutely nothing that we've engaged with Disney in the last year. But that would be an incorrect statement. But for the most part, again, we just won't. And I believe that if more people would do that, like there's a lot of us, right, in the faith. If more would do that, you know what? They would be forced to pivot and go back to things that are more wholesome.
Yeah. So the point we're going to make, and as Aaron's going to be pulling up article here. This idea, like I said, we continue to say as Christians, like, well, I don't want to be offensive, and I don't want to wade into this, and I just want to be left alone. I just want to do whatever. And we think that we can take a passive. We're just gonna, we'll just pray. Yeah. And we'll just remove ourselves. We'll just withdraw from the culture or from politics. Like I said before, the side that just wants to be left alone is going to lose. End of story, right? Because the secular side, the atheistic side, Satan is not withdrawing. Satan is not going to just take a breather. He's like, well, I think I've done enough. It's not going to happen. And this interview with Bob Iger that I'm going to talk about here, as Aaron pulls that up, makes this point exactly. And so this is Bob Iger. He was doing this interview, and he said this. He was asked about if you don't follow politics, Florida passed a bill that said that it forbade teachers from talking about sex education or sexual issues with anybody under the third grade, which seems okay to me. I think in there even tried to move it up. I mean, I would even say you shouldn't be talking about any of that stuff with anybody under 6th, 7th, 8th grade. But anyway, this is what the others, the opponents of this bill deemed the "Don't Say Gay" bill. Yeah. Even though it never mentions that at all in that bill. And then Disney decided to throw its weight behind opposing this bill. And so he was asked about this. Bob Iger was asked about this, and he says, he says, a lot of these issues are not necessarily political. Iger said in the interview, which we'll stream this week. This was a long time ago. It's about right and wrong. And so I happen to feel, and I tweeted an opinion about the "Don't Say Gay" bill in Florida. To me, it wasn't about politics. It is about what is right and what is wrong. And that just seemed wrong. It seemed potentially harmful to kids. And so what I'm highlighting here is that the other side, the secular side, the side that's pushing more and more, this humanistic philosophy, they're not abiding by the same rules that those of us that want to sit this one out are. Yeah. And this one I'm telling you, they don't see it as political. They see it as right and wrong. Our side, which we should all believe that we sit on the side of right and wrong morally, because we believe in a God that decides what is right and wrong. We're the ones wanting to sit it out, and here we have the head of Disney saying, "Hey, this isn't political. This is about right and wrong, and I'm going to push from the top down what I believe to be what is right and wrong." And he's pushing that into our entertainment. They waded into a political debate, and tried to throw weight around to influence legislation from what they think is right or wrong, not from a political standpoint, from a right or wrong standpoint. Yeah. And so this idea, again, that we can just sit aside and, not get involved in culture, not get involved in politics, because, well, this is a political issue. Abortion is a political issue. No, it's a right or wrong issue.
Yeah. It's an issue of morality.
Yeah. Transgenderism is a political issue. No, it's a moral issue. I mean, the very first thing in the Bible is God made them man and woman. He created them. God created them in our image. I mean, all these things that the other side is trying to say is, they're trying to hide it behind the hedge of this is political. So, separation. They'll be the ones. Separation of church and state. You need to stay out of this. This is a political issue. Not to them. They're saying it is, but that's just to make you shut up and sit down. And so that's part of what we want to do here too, is that as we talk about this stuff and we talk about culture, is to push to engage in the culture. And so, like Aaron, we had a Disney Plus subscription. I canceled it. You have to start doing those things. We have to start voting with our money and our feet, and impacting that stuff. Not the best example, but with the Bud Light thing that, that, or if you're not familiar with that, Bud Light made a beer can or whatever with this transgender influencer Dylan Mulvaney. It's this guy that thinks he's a girl, and again, what does that say about our culture? This is the issue that this is the one product that we finally pushed back. Like, all right, you know, our kids entertainment, you can do all that, and I'm not going to cancel my
over-sexualize all of my kids shows,
and I'm not going to cancel my Disney Plus subscription. But you put transgender person on my beer can.
On my beer can.
That's it.
I'm done.
I'm not done. But but that's hey, it worked.
Yeah.
I mean, now it's worked. It's at least it's still working. I just read an article last night that their Anheuser-Busch's sales, like quarterly sales, were down like 15% still. They're still, this is like the longest like cultural pushback boycott I've ever seen out of anything. I mean, look at Gillette. What was it, 2 years ago, a year ago? I don't remember. They released a commercial. It wasn't even during the Super Bowl. They spent a lot of money to tell you that you're a toxic male. Yeah. It's like, you're the company that I buy razors to shave my face, and you're telling me as a man I'm a bad person because, and the commercial was like guys acting like guys. Yeah. It wasn't even like egregious. It was like boys like roughhousing. You're like, oh, we're not going to do that kind of thing. And then like, a guy found a girl attractive and he was going to go talk to her. And so like another guy said, hey man, you need to just, it's like, he was just going to talk to her. I mean, he was like, what is the problem with that? When it was at, there was another one where they have,
you stop mansplaining here.
I know. No. They had, it was a transgender, man, I can't ever do the transgender math. It's hard for me. It was a girl that believed she was a guy but because she'd been taking, hormones, had a beard, and they were, using, I think it was Gillette still, to shave. Like her dad was teaching her to shave her beard with, And so they have since gone back to.
The issue there is perfectly normal.
Perfectly normal behavior.
Teach my daughters to shave their faces.
Yeah. And they received backlash from that and have returned somewhat back to normal. The like men shaving their face. Yeah. Like not making political commentary. Now there's a lot of other places that still are wading into this, and so. Again, if you think that we can just sit aside and just pray about it, like you're gonna be wondering why people are like at your door taking your kids because you're teaching them, that crazy Christian stuff. Yeah.
And if you think it won't come to that, man, I think you're deceived. It's first off, we just have an obligation to stand for what's true and what's right. Like a biblical obligation, right? We're called to as followers of Jesus, and not to do so from a place of love or from hate, but to do so from a place of love. Yes. Right? I don't seek to hate and I know Caleb doesn't. We don't want to demean anybody or be rude or anything else. That's not what it's about. But it's about standing for what's true and for what's right. Doing what God's called us to do, protecting our families. I look at the Disney thing. I say this all the time. I don't want anything sexual in my Disney shows for my kids. I don't care if it's heterosexual, homosexual. No, just why is it in there at all? No. I don't need any of that for my children. It has no place there. And then that's one of the things. Not only does it become an issue, it's like, this is what I believe, and it's like, that's just inappropriate for kids, no matter how you package it. Even if you agree with me on what sex looks like, that's not for my kid's cartoon.
Yeah.
But we have to stand up for this stuff. We have to push back. We have to seek to guard our families. Yeah. And there's no option here.
Yeah. And I always think of, as we were talking about before we went on the air here, Aaron and I both are Star Trek fans, and there's a Star Trek movie where it's First Contact, and Jean-Luc Picard, the captain of the Enterprise, they're being attacked by the Borg, which is this alien race that just is unstoppable. Yeah. And he had gotten assimilated by them at one point. We really sound like nerds now. But anyway, in the movie, they've infested. They're like almost like a virus, and they've infested his there's a hive. They've infested his ship, and they've taken over parts, and Jean-Luc is just refusing to give up the fight, even though it appears to be lost, and he's being challenged by another character about why he won't let it go. And he does this speech, which is, I think, where we're at culturally and we should be at. And he's like, basically he says they keep pushing and we fall back, and they push and we fall back, and we push and we fall back. And he says, we're drawing the line here and saying no further, and that's where we have to be as Christians, as believers, is to say, again, we don't have to be hateful about it, but it's just, listen, I'm not going to affirm, I don't agree with this. I don't believe with this. I'm not going to affirm it. I don't hate anybody. I don't hate you for thinking different. Here's the deal too. And I'm related to people that are gay. I don't affirm or agree with their lifestyle, but you know what? They don't affirm or agree with my lifestyle either. Yeah. Because I'm a Christian. Yeah. And so, but somehow in the equation, I'm the bad one, and that's how but that's because we've allowed society to frame us that way. And I'm just not going to accept that label. It's like, no, I'm not bad. I just don't agree with just the same as I wouldn't agree with somebody who committed any other sins, like that's, flagrantly engaging in whatever that sin is. I'm not going to be like, oh, that's okay. No, I don't agree with that either, because this is what the Bible tells me, and I don't agree with that. And so I'm not going to hate you. I hope that, whatever is going on in your life that makes you feel like you need to do that, hope you get that figured out. I'm more than happy to help you, but I'm not going to indulge or engage or condone. But I don't have to. I'm not hate you. Now, if you think that's me hating you, that's on you, not me. And I'm going to sleep just fine, regardless of what you think of me. Yeah. And that's how we have to get. You have to stop caring. The Bible tells us we're going to be we're going to be persecuted for what we believe. And again, if our persecution is losing friends on Facebook, well, count yourself lucky. Yep.
Yeah, and if you're not coming up against opposition, then there's probably an issue there too.
Yeah, was it Tim Keller said that if you're persecuted all the time for your faith, you're a jerk. If you're never persecuted, you're a coward. Yeah. So,
is that it today?
I think that's probably a good way to end.
Yeah, and we hope that you were blessed by this, and stick it out with us as we kind of work on our format, what we're doing here. I'm excited. I am excited about this project.
Make sure you go, and again, make sure, so if you're hearing us right now, if you're listening to this on Cedar Point Recovery's YouTube channels or Spotify channels, whatever, stop what you're doing. Just stop in the middle of traffic right now. Look us up, Reconstructing Truth, not Deconstructing Truth. There is a podcast out there. That's where we kind of came up with this. Direct opposition to those guys. But yeah, you need to like us on the new stuff, and because we won't be posting to Cedar Point Recovery for too terribly long. Yeah, just a few weeks, and then we're going to be all on Reconstructed Truth. So if you want this high quality, informative, entertaining,
with picture in picture, we got all the things now.
I mean,
so
hilarious,
shot in real
dynamic,
4K.
Yeah. All the things. If you want this to continue in your life, then you need to make sure you like us on the other stuff.
Yeah. But grateful for you guys. Again, we're going to keep the same schedule. We'll be dropping episodes every Friday, 7 a.m. And so, we'll see you right back here next week.